Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him from Scotland Rugby News, the editor extraordinaire, Gavin Harper, with a pre-Christmas, post-first leg 1872 special pod. Hello, Gav, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Christmas shopping's almost finished. It's time for the turkey, and it's time to get dissected into yesterday's game at Hampden.
Well, we need to make this quick because I've still got some shopping to do. So I'm not sure how much I can go into about yesterday. To the point where my daughters, who had been taken through to Hampden to watch whole Aitchison family there, and I got conned into Nando's on the way home because they hadn't massively enjoyed their day out to Hampden. So that's the third time they've been. They've seen Scotland women lose to the Lionesses. They've seen Hibs lose to Aberdeen. And they saw the first leg of the 1872 Cup. So I've not exactly painted Hampden in the best light, I think it's fair to say, with my daughters.
I think you've probably set them up for two falls with the Lionesses and I think Hibs record at Hampden, and you know that fine well.
Yeah. But I've been there for 2 very nice days in the sun, and I've been there for quite a lot of days in the dark.
Yes.
But do you know? Here's something that we've not spoken about. There was an attempt to reach a new audience, right? There was there wasn't quite 28,000 there, was there? It was just shy.
27.5, yeah.
Yeah, so just shy of 28,000 folk. Now, I like to think I could go into most rugby clubs and bump into somebody I know or have somebody in common. At Murrayfield, I love going to Murrayfield, whether it's the Hive or Murrayfield, and I'll see lots of folk I know. Yesterday, totally anonymous, didn't see a soul that I knew. So the positive I'm taking for that is maybe that's a lot of folk that just, I didn't know, when they go to rugby and they support rugby all the time, or they're new to it. But genuinely, parked the car, walked to the stadium, sat in our seats, went for a pee, sat in my seat, leaving the stadium, walked back to the car. I never saw one person I knew.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I did, but I take your point that you quite often bump into 2 or 3 folk that you would have seen at other games or whatnot. Look, it's got to be a positive that clearly there are more people with eyes on Glasgow Warriors, with eyes on that game yesterday. My worry is if we have a repeat of that game, that spectacle next week at Murrayfield, how do you keep these people interested? Because it was a pretty routine Glasgow win, but do people just enjoy the like Hugh Jones' try was a class bit of play? Like, do folk just enjoy that, or does it actually make it harder when the game's so one-sided to get folk in? Because let's face it, until the 73rd minute, Edinburgh, did they fire a shot?
Somebody had commented to me that the noise when the tries were scored wasn't great. Do you know what I think one of the biggest sort of lifts of the atmosphere was when Duhan took off on that run? People sort of got up off their seat or gasped or cheered, or it was a sort of, it was an out of the blue moment that, he'd been crying out for the whole game, and eventually got his paws on it with a bit of grass in front of him and he took off. But even the tries didn't really feel like it was it just too inevitable? Like it just kind of felt, Johnny Matthews tries, and he always makes fun of it. He never has to do it. He just hangs on the back of balls. And those ones are probably hard ones to get that excited about. But Hugh Jones, Jamie Dobie, Kyle Steyn, those were, dive them in. Those were tries. Kyle Steyn's just after half time was an absolute screamer.
Yeah, and actually, if Edinburgh, despite how poor they'd been in the first half, if Edinburgh got the first score at 21-7, 21-5, you say, okay, they've sort of established a foothold, but that Kyle Steyn try just totally took the game away from them so early in the second half. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think the atmosphere was the best, but I think the Glasgow kind of look, the folk that are at Scotstoun every week, the diehard Glasgow fans tried their best. I wonder if it might just take another couple of times the new people to Glasgow Warriors, the new people to potentially to rugby, just to get their feet in the door before they say, okay, I'm going to be standing up, having a go at the ref, having a go at the opposition or whatever it might have been,
Do you know the bit I found was it almost felt like we were two crowds, and I've never really noticed that in Murrayfield. Maybe it is because you're on either side of the pitch, but it almost felt like there was two crowds. Now the bonus of that was at the lull, and there was some really long stoppages. There was the first half. It seemed like every scrum, the messages and water bottles were coming on, and there was somebody. The first half took forever, but the bonus with there being two, it meant we couldn't have a Mexican wave. That was I was pleased with that we didn't have a Mexican wave, but the crowd was a funny one. I mean, it was a definite success, and the Warriors players are all over social media saying, Hampden, you were class, and like that was a good thing. And it's definitely got to happen again, and hopefully next year you get 35,000 folk there, especially if Glasgow keep going the way they're going.
Exactly. You're right. I mean, it was a success. I think, when I spoke to Al Kellick for the kind of Saturday interview, he had said, look, when Edinburgh started this, they were at less than 20,000. So we're starting a long way ahead of where they were. So look, I think, and like everything, we've seen that Murrayfield Leg's taking time to kind of grow into what it is now. And it's still got room for improvement. So, yeah, there'll be things that Glasgow look back on, and whether it's an on-field thing and off the field, and they'll think, oh, we haven't quite got that right this time. But it was the first time they'd tried it. It obviously was a success. There was, the 27,500 folk says that. And yeah, look, I think it'll be repeated. And it can only be a good thing to get more eyes on. We're looking at 60,000 people across these two games, and that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was decent. Hampden was tough to get close to, and, but it seemed like there was a buzz around it before the game. There was people piling in. There was a buzz outside. The game, the weather was difficult. I couldn't get an idea. The posts were all over the place. The corner flags in the corner I was in were just about parallel to the ground. Yeah, I felt like going down and asking if they could put some air in the ball, because some of the kicking in the first half was terrible. Ross Thompson just did not seem to be striking it well at all. But I couldn't work out if that was the conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, having seen a picture of where you were sitting, I think I was maybe slightly fortunate to be a wee bit closer to the pitch, and the weather looked like tough, but it didn't look like it was that. Like it was the excuse for some of the skill execution in the first half. That said, I thought some of the Glasgow players, there was a couple of wild passes. I'm thinking one that Tom Jordan threw that I think ended up with a yellow card for Marshall Sykes. Yeah, there was one he flung almost into touch. There was one he flung and Kyle Rowe went back and got it. There was one Kyle Stain kind of caught one-handed on his hip. Some of the skill execution from the Glasgow guys was absolutely first class. And I think that in sort of microcosm shows the difference of where these two teams are. Like Edinburgh almost couldn't put a foot right in that first half. Like it was terrible. And
do you know that somebody made a comment to me about the scrum halves? Scrum halves, so much of it is dependent on what ball you're getting.
Yeah.
But George Horn, and everybody knows my love for Horny, and it just the way he's at the breakdown, he's ready to go. There's just such a buzz and intensity, and then the organisation for Glasgow to get ready for that, whatever it is that's coming, whether it's him having a go or him delivering the ball, the intense, and then Dobie comes on, and I actually thought when he was coming on, I thought, oh, Dobie's going on the wing. But that was kind of where they were, that they were able to go, right, George, you go off to the wing. Him against Darcy was an absolute clash of the titans on the wing. Two of the biggest wingers in world rugby going up against each other. But Dobie comes on, and it looked like he's ready to spark as well. But the ball they were getting, my wife commented about Glasgow getting that kind of extra pass, the number of tip-ons that Glasgow got, or ball out the back. But you can only get that if you're generating decent ball going forward, whereas Edinburgh, it became a lot of just one up because there wasn't time for a second pass.
Yeah, totally. And like one of the things I said in my match report was, like, I think a lot of the hype had been around Sione and Musese, and that probably is unfair on Musese, given he's maybe played half a dozen games, but he's been in the Scotland squad, and there's a lot of, I think, expectation around how good he can be, but like his brother's just on a different planet.
There was a couple of times where Sione just went straight for Ross Thompson, because Musese and Sione, I think there was only once I counted that they actually, and it was an assist tackle, it wasn't a one-on-one, but there was a couple of times where Sione just there was no dancing feet at all. It was he doing, I'm going to knock you over.
Yeah, and when Edinburgh tried that, Glasgow have essentially got three centres in the midfield, and Tom Jordan was right up for it, and he was as good a match for any of the Edinburgh physicality, whether that was back row coming short off 9 or Musese a bit wider out. Look, I thought Edinburgh were really poor, particularly first half. I thought Glasgow were coasting. Glasgow were in third gear most of the game, and when they turned it on, they cut Edinburgh to pieces. There was a couple of opportunities they missed. The margin could have been bigger before Boan Venter's couple of tries saved some Edinburgh face at the end, because that could have been a really, really difficult one for them to take after.
And Glasgow ended up with 3 hookers on the pitch at the end.
They did, and a fourth one sitting back on the bench. Yeah, it was mad. It was just to be able to put 2 9s and 3 hookers is just shows where they're at. And actually,
that's a third year team.
It's just
made hookers and scrum halves.
Yeah, do you know, it's mad? But like I said, our Glasgow columnist, DePen, I bumped into him before the game, and I was saying it'll be a marker of where these teams are, that Glasgow have got so many injuries, so many players missing for one reason or another. If they can still win against an Edinburgh team that's fully loaded. It was only a couple of weeks ago we sat on here and said Glasgow against the Scarlets, that could be tricky. And it was tricky, but Glasgow found a way to win. Yesterday was, far from tricky. If Edinburgh wanted to, Grant Gilchrist said before, they were a better team than the kind of niggly, making it a scrap. Maybe that would have suited Edinburgh, because I'm not 100% sure what they were trying. It seemed to be either, as you say, 1 out, or when they got a bit of go forward, it was 2 out, and then. But Sean Everett said after the game that the players went off script, which is a damning verdict, I think, from a coach, and it's not the first time we've heard that this season. Look, they've got 2 of the best strike runners in.
There's a, sorry to butt in, but there's a bit to that. You can only, what is it the Army say? No plan survives first contact. Mike Tyson says everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Like that idea. Glasgow's defence is very, very good. And this idea that they can bring in players, what was it I saw? 38 of the 46 players are Scotland internationals.
Yeah.
So they know each other really, really well. And Glasgow are on this, winning's a habit. And they've developed this habit that players can come in, that have played, what was it, one game in 796 days or something, and come in, and it doesn't look like he's never played with that group of players, and players playing out of position. But there's so much confidence in what's going on that didn't really factor. So you're right. I'm not sure what the Edinburgh plan was, but maybe the script that they had got upset by the way Glasgow performed. Edinburgh had the ball, and then Glasgow scored.
Yeah,
like for the first 90 seconds of the game, Edinburgh had the ball, and then Glasgow got in and scored. So you're behind the post after 2.5 minutes, and you're 7-0 down.
Yeah.
And that's a situation that Glasgow then just build on, and Edinburgh, I don't know what's going on in that huddle. Like, I'm always intrigued with what's going on in huddles, because I used to love that. As a player, I used to love being in those huddles, and that's one of the bits I miss. As a coach, I always was thinking, I wonder who's talking. I wonder what. So to say they've gone off script gives you the idea that it was that's not people going on their own. If the players are going off script, that makes it sound like they've all gone off script. I don't know. I'm not really sure I'm making sense, but I find that kind of comment confusing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the fact that we've heard it before, the Lions game, Sean Everett said Edinburgh went away from the strategy in the first half and they were 48-0 down. Yesterday, said the same thing. And you think, I don't understand what message that conveys, A, to the players, B, to us as the people who are there to scrutinise the performance, and C, to the supporters. Are you saying that it's the players' fault? Did you not have an adequate plan to get into the game? Or is the whole, what's going on? So, yeah, I'm really confused by that. And I think I'm stuck with where Edinburgh go for Saturday, because I expect normally after a performance like that, you would want to make a few changes. But some of the players that you would maybe look at as coming in, somebody like a Hamish Watson seems to be out of the picture. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Do you go for more experience? Does somebody like Matt Scott give you more at 12 because of his experience in these fixtures than maybe Musese, and you take him out the firing line of that brother the sibling rivalry? But you've also spent the last 5 weeks giving Musese and Matt Curry a run of games together. Edinburgh have got to find a way of getting Doohan off his wing, because he's no use to anybody out there when they don't have the ball, or when they can't get the ball through the midfield and to him. They've done it, and they've done it well this season. I don't understand why that didn't happen. Similarly, Glasgow have got levels in them that they can go up quite comfortably, I think. And if they potentially, Franco, when he named his team for Hampden, said that they're hopefully getting Josh Mackay, Rory Darge, Henkel Venter all back. All of a sudden you now don't have three hookers in the 23. You've got the Scotland former Scotland co-captain coming back in. Josh Mackay gives you a problem about what you do, because Kyle Rowe was good at fullback. You all of a sudden are stronger, and you've just won the first game by 19 points.
The Edinburgh team is going to it's going to be the team that digs itself out. I can't see there's a significant number of changes to happen there. So that team's going to get the chance to perform. I know, Christmas Day is in the middle of this, but they're largely going to be training and together. They'll have been over it themselves. That there's a lot to go on. There's a lot of sleeps between games for them to stew on things, but they're going to want to turn it out. They took a lot of stick after the Lions game and came back, firing. You never know. Glasgow are going to be hungry, though. I mean, they're going to be desperate for for it. One of the other bits, somebody said to me, if you look at it objectively, take away the local bias that we have by knowing both the teams reasonably well, it was the winners against a team that didn't finish in the top 8.
And that's it. And I think that's probably the realistic. Edinburgh are scrapping to be in the playoffs, and they will be there or thereabouts, but it's by no means a given. Glasgow are going to be in the top 4. They probably will be in the top 2. Like, we maybe do. I think there's an expectation around these derby games that form goes out the window and they become what we talked about on Friday, that they're scraps and they're really sort of niggly like they used to be. But actually, if you put the team who finish top of the pile against, if Glasgow were playing, I'm plucking teams out of thin air here, Connacht or Cardiff, you would fancy Glasgow to win that pretty comfortably. But because it's Edinburgh, because the local bias, because it's a derby, and because all these players know each other so well, we take that sort of factor away and assume it will be closer. Yesterday proved that it obviously wasn't. I told you there
was going to be Christmas cards as well, didn't I? Predicted that.
You did, well done. Who would have banked on? I mean, look, I actually think Pierre Schumann's pretty lucky. I think that was really completely mindless.
Do you know something? I didn't even notice it. I couldn't work out what was going on. I couldn't work out what the delay was. It had kind of passed me by as an incident because I wasn't really watching what had happened. So it wasn't until I saw it on the big screen and I got a message from my mate Sean, who was watching at home, saying, "I think that's a red." The big screen was difficult for me to see, and I've not watched it back. Those things, then Marshall gets done for a high tackle. There was a couple of penalties for Jamie Ritchie pushed somebody who was sort of shepherding. There was a few little things that they just make it harder when you're in the situation you're in.
Yeah, and I think, look, the Marshall's one I think is more forgivable because he's a big guy, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", something obscene, and he's trying to tackle one of the weakest guys on the pitch, and he just gets it wrong. If Kyle Rowe steps the other way, he probably steps right into him, and Marshall's made a really good tackle. He holds him up, and Edinburgh get the ball. But for Pierre, who's played so many games, to kind of run into the back of that ruck, and I know Pierre over the years has made a bit of a thing about pulling folk over the top of rucks and trying to cause bother to the 9. I get that, but this was away from the ball. It was to a guy, shoulder to the back of a guy's head. Look, I think he's been pretty lucky with yellow. I think Holly Davidson said he hadn't come from a great distance, and she didn't see that there was great force in it. He didn't come from a great distance. I think that's fine. I'm not sure if Gregor Brown's neck agreed that there wasn't significant force. I think you could have made a case for that certainly being a red card, but look, it just put Edinburgh under so much pressure, and
they scored pretty much straight away, didn't they?
They scored straight away. They scored off the next phase. It was 14-0 with 14 men. But the number of times Edinburgh, even in that first, Darcy got held up over the line after basically the first minute. Edinburgh then gave away 2 penalties from the maul, and Glasgow scored anyway. If you give away one more there, you're 90 seconds in and you're talking about the possibility of a penalty try. Like, the number of piggyback penalties that either gave Glasgow easy entry in Edinburgh's 22 or allowed Glasgow out of their own half to relieve pressure from them was just like, Sean Everett must be tearing his hair out, because you can't, the players have to take that on. You can't coach that.
Yeah, Glasgow, just to me, it's the way I would have described that Glasgow performance. It wasn't particularly scintillating, but it was very professional.
Workmanlike, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
they did the job, and
they went about it. You know, they didn't kick probably as much, but when they got penalties, they made sure they got territory. I was delighted when they ran the penalty. When they did the tap, Dobie, and they came round that way, and they still went that way, and I thought I was chuffed when I saw that. You know, Boan tapped and went, good lad. Being inside the 22 and just playing. The conditions, as I said, I couldn't really judge from where I was sitting, but kicking at touch never fills me with a huge amount of joy. So seeing at least one attempt at a penalty move, I thought was class.
Yeah.
Sione looked like he was enjoying himself. George Horn looked like he was enjoying himself. He looked a bit gutted actually when Dobie came on. You know, Hugh Jones didn't necessarily stand out, but when he plays, geez, away he goes. I thought the forwards worked hard. Xander was able to get quite a lot of minutes rest. Because
and I think
it was probably felt the game was done, which is another sort of step forward for Glasgow, being able to give him a bit of rest, but also give somebody else some minutes.
But that's it. And Patrick Schickerling's sort of cameo didn't go that well. I think he gave away 3 penalties in a row and ended up with a yellow card. So they maybe have to revisit that selection for next week. But look, with about 55...
There was just, sorry to butt in, but the scrums, there was so many scrum penalties.
Yeah, there was. I mean, look, one of the things we probably did talk about a wee bit about beforehand was the pitch and the fact there was football on it on Friday night. The weather on Saturday was absolutely dreadful. I was worried about the pitch and how it would stand up, and I'm not sure. Some of the players said it was okay, but the number of scrum penalties suggested someone was going far wrong there.
Talk to me about the post-match interviews, because Franco, I think, had his Christmas jumper on, and I've no doubt it was two very distinct moods between Glasgow and Edinburgh. I've seen, Kyle Steyn comes back and gets to score a try and play a decent game. That's good news for him, for Glasgow, for Scotland. It's competition for Darcy and Duan. There's Sione got player of the match. George Horn could have got player of the match. Johnny Matthews gets another 2 tries to add to his 4,872 that he's got before. For Glasgow, there was so many positives. For Edinburgh, what was the press? What were the pressers like?
They were very different. Franco, very relaxed, very, I would say, content, not pleased that they gave away those 2 tries late on. I think the first question put to Franco was, "Are you pleased or are you annoyed that you shipped 2 tries?" And he was quite, you know me well enough by now to know that that has annoyed me. So yeah, I think while Glasgow were satisfied enough with a reasonable performance, I think they know they'll need to be better next week at Murrayfield, and they certainly won't get away with the drop-off that they had in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes. Edinburgh, quite optimistic, I think, and probably that last 10 minutes gave them that optimism. They've scored 2 tries by not really creating anything, by winning 2 penalties and going up the guts. It makes, it gives them some hope that start well. Another card. If Glasgow pick up a couple of cards as Edinburgh did, that 19 points, the 1872 Cup deficit starts to come into your thinking. But yeah, I was surprised. While he said that the players kind of went off script, Sean Everett still thinks they can win the 1872 Cup, but he did say, I think one of the telling lines was, "It's time for us to deliver," and I think that is true of Edinburgh. Their home record has been good, okay, but they cannot keep going away from home and putting in these tepid performances. So, yeah, the moods were very contrasting, I think. More so probably from the players than the coaches. And, we've got a stack of interviews coming up with players all through the week that you kind of get that sense. But Edinburgh know they have to be better. Glasgow expect Edinburgh to be better, but Glasgow, I think, are quite safe in the knowledge that they've got a couple of years to go.
You just, like, social media, which is a poor window into the world, but, I've been through comments on both clubs' pages. I tend not to comment, but I've been through comments on both of them. There's a lot of Glasgow supporters saying, what's going on, how's this going to go for the second leg, but there's obviously a lot of confidence going into it. There's a lot of Edinburgh chat that just upsets me, and I never like when I see players' effort being questioned, because you're not telling me any of those players weren't trying. And there was the finger pointing at a few Edinburgh players that I thought was unfair, a few individuals that I thought was really unfair, but I've kept my powder dry. Murrayfield, I think everybody's going to arrive with a point to prove. Glasgow want to nail it and win the 1872. Edinburgh, have a lot to prove to themselves. I think they'll probably circle the wagons. I don't think it really matters what you or I think or what supporters are saying on social media. I think it's going to have to come from within the group, and they'll want to do it for each other. They know that they can perform better than that.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, look, I don't think I've seen and heard Edinburgh say that some of the criticism has been personal or it's been over the top, or like, I don't think it has. I think when you're 48-0 down away from home, you deserve to be criticised, and I think that's been the case. I think when you're 33-0 down, you're sort of near your biggest rivals and staring in the face of what would have been a record 1872 Cup defeat, again, I think you deserve the criticism that will come your way. Should that be the driving factor in delivering next week? Certainly not. And I don't think it will be. I think these players are good enough that they'll want to put things right. Edinburgh have got a big chance in front of 30,000 plus at Murrayfield. We've seen it before that one team's won convincingly, at Scotstoun, or won the first leg convincingly, and then the other ones come back and won their home leg. So you can never tell, but certainly Edinburgh have got a lot of sort of hard work to do and not a long time to do it. Given that, I think they're back in tomorrow, Christmas Eve. They'll be off Christmas Day, and then back in on Friday. So there's not a huge amount of time to get things right. Whereas Glasgow might get a wee boost from a few players coming back. They'll get certainly a big lift from yesterday. Feels like there's a lot less for Glasgow to do, but you never know.
It's a tough one because both groups have got time off after this next game, and it's a long time to deal with whatever it is that happens at Murrayfield. There's too many sleeps and there's too much. Hopefully Christmas is a nice thing for everybody, that they can remember that they're not just rugby players and that the result of a rugby game doesn't define them as people, and they're going to be able to enjoy their Christmas and then get back to, right, another chance, and they've got some time off, and hopefully that's a good thing. But they want to go off wanting that time off, having put in a performance and hopefully got a result. I tell you what, my man, it's intriguing, because I think we've both sat here and got predictions wildly wrong all season. I cannot predict the two 23s that are going to play. I cannot predict what performance is going to come, and I've no clue what the result will be. Absolutely no idea. That's where we are, and there's an exciting thing about that. If it was a foregone conclusion, it wouldn't be exciting and we wouldn't have much to talk about. But there are so many questions around these two teams, this one game, and then pretty much the next 5 months.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think we talked on Friday a lot about Six Nations squads and that kind of stuff. Like, this is probably the last chance, if not second last chance, to sort of put your hand up for a Six Nations squad spot. So, from a personal point of view, there's plenty of motivation now. Both teams have loads to play for. Glasgow could get their hands on a trophy, however much the 1872 Cup means to them or to anybody. Look, I think there's loads to play for at Murrayfield. You're right, though, that predicting, we certainly had a go at it last week, but trying to get in Franco's head is a tough place to be. I've no idea what the teams might be and how it might look. So I think that's probably why we'll be back on Friday to talk a bit more about the actual teams once we know what they look like. Because, I mean, we could talk now and we could be here till Santa arrives.
I can't wait till then. Can't say any more than that. But anyway, I'm busy on Christmas Eve. Let's put it that way. What a brilliant Christmas present! Though, imagine signing folk up for Scotland Rugby News. £4 for 4 months, £18 for the year. Get involved. You get to hear it all, and there's a whole load of interviews coming up with all your favourites from Glasgow and from Edinburgh in the run up to the second 1872 Cup game. And just on a wee personal note, if you haven't signed up for Dod Age yet, please get involved. Really sad news today that Scott Stewart, former Stumel winger and MND sufferer, and if you follow him on social media, you'll know he's pretty close to the bone with everything he says, but it's been massively enlightening. I went up to his house recently and saw him, and he leaves behind his wife and his newborn. So if you haven't signed up for Dod Aid, there's your motivation. Get involved, if for no other reason than memory of Scotty Stewart, who was a top man. Big fella, enjoy your Christmas. I hope Santa's good to you. Enjoy your time off. Hopefully you'll not be scribbling all the way through Christmas, are you?
No, some time off coming up. So we'll get the Scotland Rugby News site load up with some interviews and some other bits and pieces. And then it'll be laptop off, time for the turkey dinner.
Nice. Well, we've already had some pigs and blankets because my youngest is obsessed by pigs and blankets. So we had some for lunch today, and I can just hear the Sex and the City music coming through the living room. So I think that's my wife burrowing in. That's her sorted now. So I'm away to take care of some last minute shopping, which, let's face it,
you and me both. I'll see you at the shops.
Yeah, top man. Great to see you, Phil. Look after yourself. Look after yourself, everyone. Merry Christmas, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all very, very soon.
Have a good Christmas, Bruce. Thanks.
Cheers, fella.